Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us in our WEAll Local to Global for this month of September. I'm really excited to have the WEAll Aotearoa New Zealand Hub with us today. The whole team is going to be sharing about their journey and bringing the wellbeing economy into Aotearoa Islands. And I'm, as always, we're always grateful for everything that they're doing and for everything that they're going to be sharing with us today. For those who are joining this space for the very first time, WEAll Local to Globals is a participatory event. So obviously we're going to have our speakers. They're going to be sharing their journeys, their experiences, their wisdom. And but then we're going to have a space for all of us to interact with each other, for all of us to ask questions to them or to many other people in the audience. But I just want to remind you that once they finish their presentation, there's going to be time for questions, sharings, and any ideas or anything that you would like to share with all of us. I'm going to be taking care of the chat. So while they're doing the presentations, if you have any comments or any questions that you would like to make sure that they're going to be answered, please use the chat, and I'll share with Justin, with Gareth, with Paul, and QLA. And this is it. Oh, by the way, sorry, again, because I see so many familiar faces. I'm Anna Gomez, and I am the network co-lead for the Wellbeing Economy Alliance. I share the role with my colleague Tobile, who is in the room as well. Both of us are network co-leads, and she's taking care of the membership while I'm taking care of the local hubs. And there are many other team members. I can see Margaret, who's going to be helping me this morning. I can see Michael, and I hope I'm not missing anybody else, but we're part of the amplification team from WEAll Global, and just working to bring the wellbeing economy in every corner that we can. So again, thank you so much. And I'm going to give mic to, I think Justin is going to be the first person. Is that right? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Tēnā tātou katoa, everybody, which is hello and welcome. Thank you very much for giving up your time to be at the presentations. We're really looking forward to talking, and perhaps just like to start with a little bit of protocol, or what we call tikanga here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, which is opening with an incantation, often a Māori incantation, often equated with as a prayer. It's called a karakia, but perhaps think of it just as an incantation or a way to set the scene for the meeting conversation. So I'll read through the Māori on the left, but you might like to follow with the English translation. Kia uru mai, ahaora, aho kaha, aho maia, ki runga, ki raro, ki roto, ki waho, riri ho, pai mai. Kia ora, thank you. Next slide.
Justin, I'm sorry for interrupting. I'm really sorry. I don't know if you have a microphone or something is touching your microphone, but your voice kind of disappear at some point. I don't know if it's only me. Maybe somebody else could give me feedback, but I'm losing your voice at some point.
No, it's a little bit up and down, Justin. It's as if the microphone's sort of moving around a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try and talk a little closer and more clearly. Perfect. Is that better?
That's perfect.
Amazing.
Right. That's a good start, isn't it? And good teamwork. Thank you, everybody. Look, I wanted to start, and we wanted to start just with a little bit of scene setting. We've chosen this metaphor here of a road driving into the distance, partly because we never pass up an opportunity to show some beautiful New Zealand scenery. This is Aoraki Mount Cook in our South Island, but also because we just are very conscious that New Zealand is a good example and often used as an exemplar in the world of the wellbeing economy discussion. And yet we are also very conscious we are still on our own journey, and we still have quite a long way to go on that journey. So we hope we can share some elements of that with you today in this discussion. So acknowledging that internationally, our country's been recognised for having a wellbeing budget, which was wonderful in 2019 with our centre-left Liberal government. The framework that is based on, the Living Standards Framework, it is called, has actually been in development since 2011, and that was under the previous centre-right Conservative government. So we wanted to sort of start with a little bit of that history and that scene setting. Our WEAll hub itself was formed as a loose collection of people in 2019 who were interested in this work. And that was after that wellbeing budget had been announced, not necessarily because of it. But having said that, so we weren't directly involved, but having said that, one of our founding members had been involved in a professional capacity in the development of that wellbeing budget and that living standards framework. So their involvement helped provide a logical relationship link with the hub that we then set up, but that was in their professional capacity. So one of the things I just wanted to set the scene with was making that point that we did not necessarily as a hub influence that government discussion in that area of wellbeing frameworks or budgets. And that may be a different experience for other WEAll hubs around the world who might be in an opportunity or a different situation to have that kind of conversation. But we are definitely seeking to build momentum and keep things moving forward as a hub, which is our role now. We've grown over the last 4 years. We've built stronger connections, and we have a far greater awareness with the government ministries and agencies that are connected in that space. We've formalized as a legal entity last year and secured some initial funding. So we've been able to grow as an organization, and that's really, really wonderful. And that puts us in a wonderful situation to take us forward into the future from here. So further on this journey down this metaphorical road. The others, the order will go Gareth Hughes next, then Paul Dalzell, and then Kule Anthony. And they'll each talk a little bit about some of the detail of our hub. But I just wanted to take the opportunity to set that overall scene. Next slide. So this is just the team that we have on our trust at the moment. And just before I go through these names, just to acknowledge the other founding member who's no longer on our trust, Susie Morrissey, who was the person who had that relationship professionally with the government through her role. So that was a very important relationship and part of our journey. But now there's myself, Justin Connolly, top left, Paul Dalzell in the middle on the top, Gareth Hughes, who is our country lead. So he's in it day to day and working with us. And then we have Joanna Waiora, who is not speaking today, but I notice on the presentation. So tēnā koe, Joe. Kule Anthony and Michael Worth are our now trustees. So I will stop there and hand over to Gareth to talk a bit more about what we're doing as a hub.
Oh, well, thanks, Justin. And to greet you all in New Zealand's first language, te reo Māori, kia ora na mihi nui kia koutou kia ora. I wanted to follow on by Justin and actually start by thanking the people we work with. So we've got some wonderful partnerships and collaborations that means the work that I get the privilege to explain what we've been working on the last year and a half is because of our partnership. So I want to thank the workshop who's been giving us wonderful advice, to HECO Centre for Community Innovation for the wonderful work they're doing in the community, the Centre for Policy Development, the Public Policy Institute, and the Wellington Regional Leadership Committee. We can do our work because of the support of our generous funders. So I want to thank the global team, Michael in particular, for the funding support that WEAll's been able to support our hub with, Anna, Tobele, and Marguerite from the global team, Partners for New Economy, who's managed to supercharge our work. And this is just a photo of some of the people I've been able to work with professionally this year, Nadine Walker, Oliver, and Gina. And then lastly, we've been able to have the support of wonderful entities in New Zealand who have supported our conferences or the work that you'll hear from me today. And it's wonderful that Kath Dewar from Good Sense Ethical Marketing is here with us today, who helped make our conference such a success this year. But now I get to talk about the exciting stuff, the mahi, the work that we've been working on the last year and a half. So I've come to the hub from a background in politics, a decade in Parliament, Before that, nearly a decade as a change maker with Greenpeace and other entities. I've sort of reflected in my early 40s. I've focused a lot of my work on the symptoms. It's high time we focus on the systems that are driving many of the negative social or environmental issues in our world. So this is a snapshot of some of the work the Hub has been doing over the last 18 months, connecting entities, working with the finance minister, top right, hosting wonderful events and big ideas, and also celebrating the good work that's happening. Here's presenting an award for wellbeing outcomes at the Economic Development New Zealand conference. What really attracted me to the Wellbeing Economy Alliance at the first initial contact was the theory of change behind the organization to reshape our economic systems. It's going to take new knowledge, new narratives, new connections. So I've loosely structured this 5-minute presentation around those themes. So to start with knowledge, and here's, I think, a wonderful example of working globally, internationally, but also hyperlocally. So here's the team who collaborated with the Policy Design Guide with other people on this call and other countries around the world. We were then one of 4 countries who are actively researching and documenting the journey of applying some of the learnings in the field here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. In terms of knowledge, we've been privileged to have international speakers come down to New Zealand to share international perspectives. Amanda Janu, Dr. Catherine Trebek, Sophie Howe, the first Wellbeing Future Generations Commissioner from Wales. And it's been wonderful to get those leading thinkers into meetings with ministers, in front of the public, in front of Treasury, a real host of events. One of my highlights this year was doing what we called an economics listening tour. So rather than just going around the country, which was my original plan, and talking about all the exciting new economic thinking, we decided to flip it on its head and instead go around the country and listen to ordinary people's perspectives and aspirations for the economy. We hosted workshops in towns large and small across New Zealand, and it's fascinating, the feedback. What we heard was there's a real disconnect between the values that people want to see and what they currently see in the economy. These are some of the terms people describe our current economy. However, this is the values they want to see in the economy: an economy of care, an economy of empathy, an economy of enough. In New Zealand, we have our foundational constitutional relationship between tangata whenua, Māori, and everyone else in New Zealand, and Pākehā and the Crown, Tītiri Tia Waitangi. So making sure an Indigenous voice is loud and powerful. We've also been working on narratives, or changing hearts and minds and changing the story of the economy. So we collaborated with the workshop to produce this best practice guidance, how to talk about taxes and budgets. We've literally got an election a matter of weeks away in New Zealand, and our leaders are having their first debate right now as we speak. And tax and budget is a crucial issue. So it's glad that we could share that and also participate with others in a tax coalition. We've also recently produced what we hope is a really engaging material, a zine we call The Turbulent Times, to talk about what a wellbeing economy could look like. Here's a quick snapshot of what is inside the document. We've also been active in the media, and you can see we've had quite a few stories where we're pushing this idea that we need to reshape our economic systems to work for people and planet. We've, in the connections aspect of our theory of change, been part of coalitions around climate change last year in our local body elections, around taxes now with our general election, and also working with other organisations under the collective change kōrero. A real highlight, if there was one this year, was our Economy for Public Good conference, which we held in Auckland 2 weeks ago. For me, it was amazing getting some of these speakers in a room together. These are some of our leading thinkers in Aotearoa from very diverse fields. It was amazing to have all of them on a stage. And here's a few snapshots from our sold-out conference, 250 people coming to have this really important conversation. It was a real mix of big ideas, practical trainings, case studies of business success stories, which we'll hear some more from Kule soon, community green shoots, I call them, of the new economy in action. At the conference, we also launched our open letter. This is an open letter to all elected representatives and candidates this election, with 6 big ideas to really push the envelope when it comes to the economy. Can I urge everyone on this call, you don't have to be a New Zealander to sign it. So please go to weall.org.nz/open letter and you can sign it. And I've been heartened by the huge support we've had from significant institutions in New Zealand and the wonderful support. This is how we see our role, coming up with new ideas, coming up with new narratives of hope, and then lastly, connecting people around this mahi. So it's a huge privilege to do my role, to work with my team. Can I finish, however, by acknowledging one person in particular, Ravani, who's on the call today. She's been a volunteer for us, doing incredible work, getting all those organizations for the open letter. So it's so wonderful. I can acknowledge you and all your hard work. And to my trustees, you've been such an amazing team. It's a privilege to work with you. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, everybody. My name's Paul Dalzell. I'm one of the trustees that Gareth has just mentioned and have been involved with the WEAll Aotearoa New Zealand hub since its earliest days. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about lessons from New Zealand. And I like to begin that presentation by paying tribute to Dame Marilyn Waring, who is a New Zealander who was elected to Parliament in 1975 as a 23-year-old young woman. In her second term, she was the only woman in government. And when she left Parliament in 1984, she wrote a very influential critique about gross domestic product and the way that we record economic well-being in a book that has really founded well-being economics in our country. And she focused in that work on two huge issues: the way that gross domestic product does not record work for well-being, especially by women caring for others, and the way GDP does not record environmental damage unless it has some impact on market values. So that set the scene, and it was not until 3 decades later that the Minister of Finance presented the Wellbeing budget to Parliament on 30th of May 2019. And I've put a quote up there from the Wellbeing budget, and it was really an effort to address some of those criticisms, to go beyond GDP, to think about some of the long-term challenges we face affecting well-being and improving the state of the environment. Let me give you an example outside the budget process where the government is trying to think more carefully about environmental well-being. So New Zealand is a series of islands surrounded by water. Waterways run through all of our land areas. And so part of the government's guidance to management of fresh water includes this new fundamental concept, well, new for our legislation, called Te Mana o Te Wai, which you can understand as meaning something like protecting the integrity of waterways. And this has now become the first objective of freshwater managers. They must protect Te Mana o Te Wai, must protect the integrity of waterways. Now, the people who lead that protection in many respects are local governments, and particularly our regional councils. And it's been a feature of local government in New Zealand for more than 20 years that they have a statutory purpose to promote the social, economic, environmental, and cultural well-being of communities in the present and for the future. So a lot of the exciting things around well-being in Aotearoa, New Zealand, are being led by local governments on behalf of their local communities. A good example is the Waikato Wellbeing Project. So Waikato is a region of Aotearoa, New Zealand, towards the top of the North Island, and it has initiated a wellbeing project to achieve a more environmentally sustainable, prosperous and inclusive Waikato region by 2030 and beyond. And it's an example of initiatives around the country at the local regional level inspired by this commitment to community and environmental well-being. I'll just say that the name is important, Waikato. It comes from the name of the country's longest river. And it was named when Māori first arrived in Aotearoa on the Tainui canoe. And so it's actually one of the oldest geographical names in our country. And it means water with a mighty current or flow. I'll come back to this. Another river in the North Island is the Whanganui River. And in March 2017, Parliament recognised a relationship between the river and local Māori tribes. There's a well-known saying from the region that says, ko Aotearoa, I am the river, ko te awa ko au, and the river is me. So building on that relationship, this legislation made Whanganui River a person in the eyes of the law. This is an example that is being followed in other places now around the world. So let me finish with a framework that the New Zealand Treasury is using to address wellbeing. We use two frameworks within the Treasury, and this is a framework prepared by Māori known as He Ara Waiora. He Ara just means a pathway. Waiora literally has the sense of living water. Waiora, water that is alive. And it's a word often used to express well-being. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole framework. We could spend a year talking about the framework and still be scratching only the surface. But I want to point out that at the middle of this Indigenous framework is Wairua. So there's that word wai again, meaning water. Rua means second. So I understand Wairua as second water, flowing through the universe, connecting all things together. I think this is a profound way of thinking about Wairoa, well-being, by focusing on Wairua, this connectedness that we all have amongst each other and with the universe. So when we're talking about well-being economics, we often say, start with the why. The Wellbeing Economy Global Alliance, for example, our why is for an economy in service of life. But in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we say, start with the why, WAI, the water, te mana o te wai, Waikato, Waiora, Wairua. This is the essence binding us together, underpinning our commitment to a well-being economy. Now, I don't want to leave you thinking that all is well in Aotearoa, New Zealand. As Justin said, that is not the case. We are on a journey. We continue to pollute waterways, for example, despite that national statement on freshwater management. And we struggle to give a fair chance to all people. Nevertheless, we are exploring in Aotearoa, New Zealand, what well-being might mean in our own bicultural and multicultural context. And we're very happy to share our learnings on occasions like this. Kia ora tātou katoa, may you and I, all of us together, enjoy well-being.
Kia ora, thank you, Paul. That was beautiful. Very hard act to follow that. So well woven together. I'm just going to pull up a few last slides. So kia ora koutou, my name is Kule, and I'm a relatively new trustee to the team here. I'm currently the Aotearoa Director for WEAll, which looks after B Corp certification, soon moving into a new role, but this is sort of the work that I've been doing. And what I'm really hoping to bring to the team here is this focus on the connection with businesses and a wellbeing economy. It's definitely something in my experience. I've seen many inspiring leaders want to contribute to a wellbeing economy and explore what that means, but really challenged by kind of figuring out how that works and how to make that connection between being a good business and contributing to a good society. So I just wanted to illustrate a few examples here. These are all B Corps, naturally. The two on the left, Kathmandu and Kiwibank, are two of our largest certified B Corps in New Zealand. Both publicly listed. Kiwibank is a government-owned financial institution, but independent of government, and both, demonstrating that this concept of stakeholder governance and well, everybody's frozen, so hopefully my internet is okay.
It's good, yeah.
It's okay, cool. Demonstrating this idea of stakeholder governance, being accountable to people and planet, is not just something for small leading edge businesses, but those that are, really influential in our New Zealand economy as well. And so I think it's really exciting that we have some of these large and listed businesses in Aotearoa that are demonstrating that a different way of doing business is possible. And then the third example there is actually a much smaller business, but is a Māori owned, they're not even structured as a business. In New Zealand, we have a bunch of land-based trusts, which are the result of our treaty settlement process, where the iwi tribes across New Zealand own areas of land, and they use that land for various purposes, and some use that for business. So this is a small Manuka honey business called Manawa Honey, and it comes from the Tūhoe Tuawhenua Trust, iwi in the North Island. And what's really beautiful about these types of organizations is that they have intergenerational well-being concepts built into the way that they are established as organizations. So we're very lucky in Aotearoa that we have this unique structure and approach to business that we can learn from, that all businesses can learn from, and that is really aligned with this concept of a wellbeing economy. And we have businesses, both Māori and non-Māori, that are really looking to this model of intergenerational decision making as a core principle of how they can contribute to a better society around them. And I also wanted to touch on this concept of collective action. So this is something we're really starting to see in the business sector, as businesses, that are wanting to contribute to a wellbeing economy realize that they can't make these changes alone. And so coming together as coalitions, as groups of businesses to influence broader change, whether that's in issues-based things around climate, or the one in the middle there is a quote from the Future Farmers organisation, which is a group of young farmers looking to transform the agriculture industry in New Zealand. I think this is a really key lever for us to engage with as WEAll, to support businesses to do more of this collective action, and connect that to the work that we're doing, and influence policy and influence government at a bigger level. And some of this legislative change is already happening. So this year we have seen a change to the Companies Act, adding a clarification around directors' duties. So in practice, this doesn't really change a whole lot. Directors have always been allowed, or have been for quite some time in New Zealand, been allowed to consider people and planet alongside profit in their decision making. But this amendment bill clarified that this was very much within the rights of directors and within their responsibilities to the company to consider environmental and social factors when looking out for the best interests of the company. So definitely a move in the right direction. It would be great to see this become a mandatory consideration for directors in future, but baby steps. And we're also starting to see a lot of publications come out from large, consulting firms, law firms, around the roles and responsibilities of directors to be accountable to all of their stakeholders, not just to their shareholders. So that's really promising. And, I think that many directors are already putting this into practice and taking that responsibility quite seriously. But I just wanted to finish on this this slide, which is an extract from a recent sustainable consumer report here, the Kantar Better Futures report. And one of the really clear themes that came through was that consumers understand that we need to make more sustainable choices. But this concept of the economy and the cost of living is something that's detracting a lot from sustainable, ethical consumer choices, and businesses are responding to this as well, which is scary, because it means that they could start to put things like sustainability and impact on the back burner, which really elevates the need for the work that we're doing at WEAll to make that connection between environment and the economy and the bigger systems thinking to become much more mainstream and connect these issues that we can't solve the cost of living without solving the environmental crisis. And I think that businesses are only just starting to realize this, and there's a huge opportunity for us here to do more in this space. So I think that's it, and I will close up there. I think we're going to go to some Q&A. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Well, first of all, thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you have shared. Thank you for, all this incredible work that you're doing, that you're bringing into so many places in both islands, and I have learned already a lot in these first 30 minutes. So this is the time for everybody in the room to raise your hands. You can use the icons at the bottom in the menu. You can raise your hand. I'm going to make sure that people are going to have the opportunity to ask or comment or suggest or anything else that you want to go a little bit deeper in everything that they have presented already. Please take your time now and just raise your hand. And I can see there is already Oton, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Oton Solis, if you want to unmute yourself. And then after it's going to be Sama, Abdallah, and Michael.
Thank you so much. I am Oton Solis from Costa Rica. I'm so sorry. This is the first time I get in touch with you. Another Costa Rican lady advised me to get acquainted with what you're doing. Are there papers, academic papers or peer review papers that will help me to better understand what you're doing? I'm an economist, of course, not familiarized with all this stuff. I'm very, 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 very much interested in getting acquainted with this stuff. Thank you so much for the presentations. Excellent.
Thank you, Otten. I'm an economist also, so I have written some material. The WEAll global website is full of material from books recommended through to videos, through to short discussion papers. But I'm going to put my academic email into the chat box, and if you want to send me a message, I'd be very happy to carry on a conversation about resources that are available.
Much obliged.
Will I just go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Really interesting presentation. And yeah, it's great to get that sort of insight into what's going on in New Zealand. I have two questions, if I may. One is, someone mentioned that there's going to be elections next month. And I'm curious to hear what role, if any, the concept of wellbeing economy and wellbeing budget is playing in the elections. Are there people who are sort of using it as part of the politics in a positive or a negative way? Interesting to hear about that. And then secondly, I guess related, you're probably aware of there was a recent paper by Milena Books and someone Mason, who was looking at the sort of the mismatch between the rhetoric of WEAll sort of activists and WeGo governments. And I'm just wondering if any of those working in WEAll New Zealand have reflected on that. I guess it could also be a general question to WEAll, but particularly interested to hear what your perspective from New Zealand is. And sorry for talking quiet, but I'm in an office. So
Thank you so much.
We're all going to fall over each other wanting to answer elements of that question. I'm going to let Gareth, because he was a politician. He's the best place to speak to this, I think.
Well, thanks, Justin, and thank you for the great question. So the election's very close. It's in time. Unfortunately, it's not particularly close in nature. So it looks like the chances are we will see a change of government. However, we're a non-partisan, non-political organisation, so we don't take a side in that. But we would acknowledge, the work that Paul really articulately explained around the wellbeing budget. We've also had the first statutory wellbeing reports being published. However, what we would point out, as Justin did, that a lot of that work started under a Conservative government. The previous, it's called the National Party in New Zealand, did some work on what was called social investment, which was a concept, if you look on the WEAll website, around failure demand. So early interventions to avoid downstream problems, which if there is a change of government, that's a framework we can continue to work with. In New Zealand, we haven't had, almost jealously looking at Scotland, a minister for wellbeing economy, as a term being used, I think, much more. It seems I've got a Google alert for wellbeing economy, and there's a huge volume of material that I'm reading coming out of Scotland. So it's very much in the discourse. So while there isn't a huge amount of conversation around a wellbeing economy in New Zealand, there is the pro there that the wellbeing approach hasn't become particularly politicized. Our opposition party isn't suggesting they would scrap it. We may see a change of tone or brand or language if there's a change of government, but it hasn't become a political football, which I think is quite a welcome initiative here. So the term is, I think, still very positive. Would one from the team like to maybe take the other part of the question?
You or me, Paul?
I'm just saying I'm not familiar with the work, and I've just tried to Google it while Gareth was explaining the political situation. So maybe you can get the spelling right for me in the chat, and I'll certainly follow that up. I was just going to re-emphasize what Justin said at the beginning, that I think everybody involved in this conversation in New Zealand realizes we are on a journey, and that there are tensions and contradictions and sensitivities in all of the conversations that we are having. And this is reflected in our current election debate, where there is a wide perception that people are really struggling economically because of inflation, cost of living rises, the price of houses, what am I going to say, have doubled in the last 10 years, and people are feeling that they don't have the opportunities as young people that, say, people of my generation had. And so what does well-being mean when people are feeling like they are struggling to feed the family each week? And so you can't just simply concentrate on, let's look after our waterways, for example, as if people were not struggling to provide living water on the table for their children. So, I take the question and, okay, so I spelt books as in what you read, rather, that's why I couldn't find it. So I will read that now and see if I can get back to you before the end of the session.
Thank you, Paul. I don't know if Justin and Kile, if you want to add anything else to what has been mentioned. Otherwise, I will pass to Michael.
Perhaps just a quick comment, and just recognizing that what we often refer to as a paper wall, right? Like in terms of between an organization like WEAll Hub that is exists to help advocate. But the we go mechanisms of offices of government and ministries sharing stories amongst themselves, and there will perhaps inevitably be a tension there, like an aspiration and a reality, and those things need to drift together over time. So perhaps just acknowledging that as a realistic tension, but one that's also a healthy and creative space.
Thank you so much. Michael?
Thanks, Anna. So fantastic presentation, very inspiring what you've been up to. I was just intrigued, Gareth, mainly to learn if there was anything that surprised you in your listening tour. Obviously, you had those two word clouds about the sort of the reality of the way that the economy is viewed and what people would like it to be. But was there something that came out that you weren't expecting?
Two things, and thanks for the question, Michael. The first was part of the catalyst for why I did the tour. I talked to one entity that does a lot of work with deprived communities with really on-the-ground support. When I asked them to participate, they said, the economy, that's not for us, that's too traumatic to think about. Another entity that works on a living wage, so above a minimum wage, I asked, would you like to send a representative? And they said, well, that's the economy. Other people deal with that, not us, which I thought was quite striking, that we've sort of ceded so much agency and influence to economists, no disrespect, Paul and others, but also that it's quite a term which you read about in the business pages of the newspaper. You maybe don't get the whole holistic sense. So that was surprising for me, is how much many community groups who directly interface with the economy don't feel they can participate in the debates. And that's something we tried to change to give people a feeling of agency and power. I mean, ultimately, when you go back to the original root term of the word economy, oikos from Greek, it's around households. And of course, people are experts in the economy in their day-to-day life. I think the other maybe surprising thing was that everyone I heard from, and this is in previous meetings with ministers and councillors and experts, is that no one's really defending the status quo, the current business as usual economy. I wonder, maybe 5, 10, 20 years ago, a lot more people would be defending it. Everyone sort of acknowledges it's broken, it has to change, and everyone's asking the question, what's next? I find, as a sort of long-term change maker, that really inspiring, because we really have moved the debate along, and everyone's now not wanting to just critique, they're wanting to discuss tangible ideas and policies. So I found that really surprising. And if other representatives from hubs are on the call tonight, it was a wonderful experience, and I'd really encourage you to maybe consider doing a local economics listening tour in your communities.
Thank you so much, Gareth. And Lydia, so good to see you here. Welcome.
Hi, Anna. Good to see you. Kia ora koutou. Just a bit of context for this question. I'm a Kiwi who's been living abroad for the last 12 years, and in a few weeks I'll be moving home. And I've been working in the new economy movement for most of that time. So I'm really curious to hear your reflections on the wellbeing economy as a movement or a field. What does it look like to you at the moment, and what's needed moving forward in terms of growing the movement itself as much as what the movement is working on?
Shall I take that team, and then maybe we can all chip in? Hey, it's going to be wonderful to have you back in Aotearoa, Lydia, and you can still see that bit of Kiwi accent there. Look, I think the movement is really growing, and there's what I'm sensing and seeing as well is huge desire to participate in these conversations. With our conference and outside of that as well, I mean, what is clear is the leadership of Māori communities in New Zealand, both Te Ao, Mataranga Māori. We had some amazing speakers there, such as Sasha McMeeking from Canterbury University, one of the architects of He Ara Waiora, which Paul talked about, Dr. Jason Mika from Waikato University, who has his theory of manaho, where mana, that integrity, that word that Paul used, or power. It's a pity there's no equivalent English word to mana. It's such a powerful word, but an economy based on that and reciprocity and how giving can actually make one feel richer. We're seeing lots of, I think, energy in the degrowth movement. Just last weekend, New Zealand saw its first national degrowth conference. And I understand from Nate Hagens, who was one of the speakers, that New Zealand has the highest per capita interest in degrowth of any of the countries he broadcast to, which I thought was really interesting. And there was a lot of energy in that room. We see other movements, particularly community groups that are really leading. Likewise, the business groups that Kule talked about, and there's a huge energy in those spaces. So I sort of see kind of like a braided river, all these streams coming together. And next year, New Zealand celebrates its 40th anniversary from our last great reform period, which was, neoliberalism or Thatcherism or Reaganism as it's known overseas. In New Zealand, it's known as Rogernomics. So I think next year there will be a lot of looking backwards as well, how New Zealand has improved, how New Zealand has maybe gone backwards over the last 40 years. But to my mind as well, and a reminder that what we're talking about with economic systems is products of design, not natural forces, man-made, human-made products, and they can change again. So it's going to be great to have you back as part of that movement, Lydia.
Thank you, Gareth. I don't know if anybody else would like to add anything to Gareth's response.
I was just going to add my reflection from the conference that we held. As Gareth said, it was the first one that was done, and it was quite amazing. It was sold out, 250 people, and it was sort of all these people that had actually worked with each other probably over the last couple of decades in some way or another, and then gone off down their little paths. And then it was this uniting force that sort of brought all these people, amazing people, back together in a room. And there almost hasn't been that uniting force or umbrella for everybody to come together. And so I feel like this, this WEAll movement has the real potential to bring all, as Gareth was saying, the different strands from academia, business, government, around something that's big enough and high level enough for everyone to engage with.
And I think too, the climate crisis is creating its own momentum for change. So in our country, we had 2 extreme weather events in the first half of this year, just off the scale for what we are used to. And this is a sign of things to come. And the impact on government accounts and on private sector insurance policy are so great that there will need to be change. And so I think one of the things that the wellbeing economy movement globally is doing is that it is opening up conversations and presenting solutions that even if there isn't an immediate impact, people are looking for alternatives now. And one of the disappointments for me in the current election campaign is how quickly we've forgotten those events. Here we are in September, and it's as if January and February was a long time ago on a different planet. But as these happen year after year after year in increasing frequency, the government is not going to be able to bail out people on an ongoing basis. And we are going to have to reorganize the way we do things so that we pay greater respect to the natural environment.
Totally, Paul.
And if I may, just because everybody else has responded to Lydia, I feel I must. Tēnā koe, Lydia. But just very quickly as well, acknowledging the time, the quick summary point I would add to all of that is looking for examples and champions kind of across political spectrum and upwards through the political structure of the country. So local government has a very important role to play. Paul has mentioned the Waikato Wellbeing Project. And so I think there's stuff more than just central government. There's a lot of stuff that is already happening and more could happen at local level. Love to connect with you and chat more about it when you are back. We are variously spread around the country, so I look forward to chatting more.
I'm really glad that this connection.
Anna,
yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say I saw a question in the chat from Kit, which I'm very happy to answer quickly.
Wonderful. I was going to say it.
Yeah, so this question around, I'm curious if poverty, trauma, along with intergenerational poverty, trauma, recovery, healing, rehabilitation is addressed in these conversations with the wellbeing economy, wellbeing budget. So fantastic question. The wellbeing budget did have quite a strong focus on youth, which is kind of part of the intergenerational component. One of our personal learnings, we were part of a wonderful global team that helped put together the WEAll policy design guide, which is one of the resources on the web. One of the learnings we have taken from partners here in Aotearoa, Te Hiko, in Porirua particularly, is the role that intergenerational trauma does play in being a barrier and a constraint. And so it's very much a part of the conversation for some. And also just to acknowledge, if you Google the New Zealand Productivity Commission, they've just finished a report called A Fair Chance for All. That's the New Zealand Productivity Commission, A Fair Chance for All. And intergenerational trauma and the impacts of that feature quite strongly in that document and their recommendations. So for some it's maybe not in everybody's conversation, but there's some parts of it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Justin. So I'm aware of the time, and Anna, you're showing up first and then Summer. I hope that's correct, and I can make sure that both of you have time for your questions or comments. Anna,
thanks so much. I'll be quick. Thank you so much for the lovely presentation. Really enjoyed it. And I was wondering, it's more a question to Gareth about the listening kind of tour. Did I understand it correctly that was more with professionals that work in the field? And I was wondering, have you engaged at all with regular citizens? Because I'm working here in Scotland with Glasgow City Council, engaging regular citizens. And what I'm actually finding is no one has ever heard of the wellbeing economy. So that's what we're trying to work on, is to spread the word. And my project is actually looking into what does well-being and what would a well-being economy mean for regular people in practice. What are the well-being factors that we need to target? So yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Anna, and all the best with your really important work over there. I think for our listening to it, it was a real mix. So most of the events were workshops where we invited representatives of different sectoral groups, for want of a better term. So the local business council, a union, a disability rep, iwi and hapu, or Indigenous voices. And we had a big spreadsheet of a number of organizations in each region and asked them to send a representative. We did have a few focused workshops as well. So Michael Worth, one of our trustees, helped organize one with the business leaders community in Auckland, our largest city. Our partner, Wesley Community Action, helped organise one in one of our most poorest communities as well, to make sure those perspectives. So it was a real range. We also participated in some larger events where we couldn't get the granularity of small workshops of around 10 to 12 people, much larger audiences, but there we did get a bigger cross-section of the community as well. I think this is why I'm really excited around more participation. So citizens assemblies, participatory budgeting. We're just starting to experiment with that now in New Zealand. And it was wonderful having Amanda Janu in New Zealand recently talking about what's happening in Barcelona and France. And I think there's a great lesson. And what I took out of the listening tour is when you ask people what their values they want to see in the economy, they don't see it represented in the current economy. And I think having mechanisms like citizens assemblies helps really articulate that, but also strengthen the arm of politicians who might be nervous to do some of these things, but if there's a strong citizen mandate behind them, it will be easier to do.
For sure. So are there active engagements with regular citizens, or is that still coming up? And what's your plan going forward? Is it mainly citizens assemblies, basically?
Our councils and different entities are leading citizen assembly work. I don't think we've got the scale and resources as a hub to do them well at the moment. But in our open letter, for example, this is one of the big ideas that we're challenging, articulating, supporting governments and councils to do more of.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. Sama?
Thanks. Well, I was umming and ahhing between two questions, but Gareth has given me bit of a clue for what I should ask next. So I haven't heard much. So I've worked on indicators for a long time. I didn't hear much talk about indicators during the presentation. And I'm just wondering what your perspectives in WEAll, in the WEAll Hub in New Zealand are regarding the role that indicators can and could play for a wellbeing economy in New Zealand. So New Zealand obviously has the Living Standards Framework dashboard, which is great, but from our perspective, some of the work I've done on indicators, there's an indication that these big dashboards don't really, it's quite hard for people to grasp them, yeah? So they don't really sort of capture the public's attention, and neither politicians in policymakers, yes, but sort of in the big picture, they're hard to gather and understand. So I'm just wondering, are you satisfied with the dashboard? Is there a sort of an ask that you would like to push for? We're particularly interested in the idea of participation, so citizens' assemblies to create new indicator sets, and I'm just wondering if that's an idea you've toyed with. Thanks.
I'm happy to attempt a first answer to this, team, and the way I would answer your question, Samar, is that we try not to focus too much on the specific indicator set. Like, we're fairly agnostic as to what particular framework is used, and there are many in the conversation in New Zealand. You mentioned the Living Standards Framework. He Ara Waiora is complementary to that, but different. Local government sort of is legislatively responsible for a slightly different set of definitions or indicators. So it is a little bit of a complicated space before you bring in genuine progress indicators or other things. What we try to get people to focus on is the conversation that comes after indicators. So indicators is always one of the first steps, and they're wonderful and really important in how you measure or monitor and report. But you could choose, whatever you choose, often the causal relationships that sit below a lot of those systemic things which we're seeking to change, there's a lot of similarity there. And so we try to get people to think beyond just the measures, because the conversation for some stops at measures and they think that will solve the solution. So hopefully that's an appropriate answer in the very limited time we had left, but also more than happy if you've swapped emails with Paul, to have more of a conversation with you about that, if that's appropriate.
Great, thanks.
So, thank you. So believe it or not, we've been together for an hour, almost, I think we've been together for an hour. And we're going to have to wrap up. I think we could continue talking about everything that you've been doing and many more things, but this is the time. So first of all, I want to give the four of you an opportunity to say something before I say goodbye to everybody in the room. Is your moment.
Just a greetings to you all again, to say thank you very much. Justin will finish with a karakia. So let me just say it's wonderful to be part of the WEAll global community, global family, global whānau, we would say. And so I reach out to all of you and say, let's carry on the conversations and exchange knowledge with each other as we work on this really important work.
Thank you, Paul. Yulai, Gareth.
Yeah, just to reiterate, thank you. It's really lovely to meet you and have so many questions and engaging discussion.
Thank you.
We have a word tautoko, which means yes, and I agree with the previous speaker, and I wholeheartedly do. And just to say, I find it inspiring, forums like this, and it's part of my work when I travel around New Zealand talking to people, is to remind them that these conversations are happening in rooms all across the world. We're part of a global movement for change, and I find that an inspiring message. So I'll pass over finally to Justin.
Thank you, Gareth.
And you hear me okay? Yes, I'm not muted. Yeah, and I would just tautoko all of what's been said. It's really wonderful being part of this global community seeking this change. And so, and these conversations give us an opportunity to fill our cup, so to speak. And also just I acknowledged Joe Waitoa earlier. I didn't realize Michael Worth, our other trustee, was on the call. So tēnā koe, Michael, just acknowledging you as well, and thank you. And I will now close with this final karakia or incantation. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia I te urutapu nui a tāne, kia wātea, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te wairoa, I te ara takatu, hui e, tā iki e. Thank you all.
Wow, thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope that this is, for those that are at the beginning of the day, I know that others are at the end of the day, but I hope this has inspired you to have really interesting conversations and bringing everything that we have learned and we have shared here into all the different circles that we are part of. I'm taking the second water concept, Paul, that you yeah, I'm taking this with me and I need to go deeper into that because it really resonates with me. So for those who this is the very first time that they have joined a Local to Global, we're doing this every month. We're highlighting what hubs are doing around the world. Please join us next month. And huge thank you to the Aotearoa Hub team and to everybody for sharing this moment with all of us. Enjoy a wonderful evening, a wonderful day, and see you soon again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.